This is number 3 for x and y intercepts. This question is going to be asking us for the y-intercept of a line passing through the rather ugly point of negative 24, 37.2 and 16, negative 32.8. Don't hate the decimals. They're just numbers like everybody else. Y-intercept, right away, you should know by now that we could write down half that ordered pair. We know for sure that regardless of what the x is, that y, regardless of what the y is, that x is going to be a 0. And because it's a y-intercept, that's also code for b in y is equal to ax plus b. So as soon as we get the b, we know what we're dealing with. And we could see it visually on the graph right over here. There's our b, which of course will be 0 something when we solve. So we can't get anything until we have an equation, and we need to get an equation using the equation of the line that we have been drilling into our heads. Y is equal to ax plus b, and we know we want that b, but we can't get it until we get the a. Now we've got x's and y's all over the place that we could plug in, right? xy over here or xy over here, so no problem there, but we need an a, and then we'll get the b. So straight up to get that a, we're going to use the rule a is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And we know that those x's and y's are obviously going to come from the points up here. And we just need to take a second to think about which one we want to label as which. So I'll call that x1 and y1. And I'll call that one x2 with its pair y2. You know, the order, again, insignificant, but stick with your decision. So y2 is going to be negative 32.8 minus y1, which is 37.2. And that will be over x2, 16, minus negative 24. Now there you got to be careful because we're subtracting a negative number. So just when we're plugging that into the calculator, be cautious. So negative 32.8, we'll do that one first. Negative 32.8, and then from that I'm going to subtract 37.2, leaving me with negative 70 for the top part of that fraction. And then that's going to be over 16 minus negative 24. Now, different calculators work differently, but 16 minus, just to show it to you the way I wrote it, looks something like that. 16 minus negative 24, which is equal to 40. On this calculator, 16 minus negative 24. I don't actually need the brackets. It'll do the same thing for me, but just to show you the two ways. So there we have our rate of change, or our slope, and not a pretty number. Let's simplify that. So negative 70, which we'll divide by 40, and that's going to give us the number negative 1.75. And we should have anticipated a negative slope. We can see it. The line's going down. So if you didn't get a negative, that line alone should have given you a sense that there's a problem. Just like we could probably predict that the b is going to be a negative number here, assuming the line is drawn correctly on the Cartesian plane. But we've got an a, and we've got x's and y's, and we have a rule which will now allow us to get that b. So I'm just going to take a second, come over here, rewrite the general rule, or sorry, the slope-intercept form as it's called, the rule that we use all the time, and remind you that I've got an a, and then I can pick x's and y's. I can either pick this x with this y, or I could pick this x with this y over here. Doesn't really matter. I generally use my P1, so 37.2 is my y. 37.2 goes right there, is equal to a, which is negative 1.75, negative 1.75 times the x, which is negative 24. I'll put brackets there just to make sure I offset the fact that that's a multiplication. Right? Show that with a little tiny dot if you want, plus b. So I'm going to multiply those two together and simplify. 37.2 is equal to negative 1.75 times negative 24 is equal to a positive 42. So I'm now left with this. I know that I want to isolate that b to solve for b, so I'm going to subtract that 42 from both sides, which means I've got to go 37.2 minus 42, leaving me with negative 4.8 is equal to the b. Now, because we're being asked for the y-intercept, we've got it. I mean, we've answered the question right here. We know the y-intercept. It's known as a b, which I kind of indicated to you up here. But we will take a second anyways. Just good habit. I always like to do it to rewrite the full equation. Negative 1.75. Sorry about my writing there. X minus 4.8. There's your full-blown equation, but the answer that they want really just comes from there, which is 0, negative 4.8, and that was number 3.